Before we start Christian Worldview Friday, breaking news, kind of. But we have a major controversy going on in the world of football. And the World Cup just happened, and so FIFA was definitely taking a victory lap. By all accounts, the North American World Cup was a success, and Spain is still celebrating. FIFA was still celebrating. Gianni Infantino, the president, was still just receiving all this praise, kind of, except from the Belgians for sure and a lot of Europeans. And today it came out that he was proposing. And now there was rumors of this right before the final, that he was thinking of doing this. But it's right before the final. Nobody was going to really pay attention to this until he either proposed it or, either he proposed it, and that's when we were going to pay attention. But right the week of a final, you're not going to pay attention to it if it's just rumors. And today he comes out and he proposes to sell off 20% of FIFA, technically. 20% of FIFA would be sold to private equity investors, and this would bring in $20 billion. It would be, and the members of the association of FIFA would each receive $40 million. And so by a deadline of September 19th. And so this isn't like, let's talk about it in a few years, we'll see. No, this is like, hey, we got like less than 2 months. Say yes and you get $40 million. Say no and you just keep the 10 that you've been getting. And he is selling it off to obviously make more money. And part of it is it would create this new venture that is called the FFE. They would manage all FIFA competitions, sponsorships, and they would handle the broadcasting license for FIFA. It would be sold for 20% of the of FIFA, and it would be to private investors that are all backed by Thrive Capital. And so the funding incentive would be that it would bring in $10 billion more. And so everybody gets 40 million in September, versus, because it would raise everything to 10 billion in the total funding package, as opposed to the 2.7 that it is now. And so FIFA would be the majority owner. They would have all the control over the sports governance and competition rules and everything else. And that's what he proposed. And part of his proposal was Capo Verde. You guys like Capo Verde? You guys enjoy that story? We all love that story. Well, with this, we can bring in more. We can make more Capo Verdes, and more of them can develop with this money and with these investors that would come in. And immediately UEFA got up, had a meeting, and unanimously 55 members of the UEFA voted not only against the proposal, but voted to boycott all FIFA competitions, which include the World Cup, which include the men's and the women's, which include all FIFA competitions, FIFA Club World Cup, and anything else that FIFA can possibly put together. All of it would be completely just boycotted by UEFA. Men's, women's, FIFA Club World Cup, any intercontinental cup, so like Nations League, all that is gone, or all that they will not be participating. And this isn't just the big teams. This is the U20 World Cup, the sub-17, the sub-20 men's and women's, and sub-20 and 17 men's and women's World Cup completely gone. And then it's also like includes like beach football and everything else. And so this is huge. This isn't just like, hey, we're upset. This isn't like the Belgians being upset at the Americans or at Gianni Infantino for the delayed red card. This is, we are out. And so as of today, as of Thursday, the Europeans are out of FIFA. The Europeans are out of all FIFA competitions. And there is a big problem because you can't have a World Cup without Europe. It just wouldn't be the World Cup, especially when you consider how dominant the European teams have been in the World Cup. When you consider that 6 out of the last 8 have won the World Cup. In this past one, we had 3 of the 4 final 4 teams where 3 of them were European. And so you remove the Europeans and you remove the World Cup. This just becomes a glorified Nations League. And so they all said they're out. And UEFA's big enough and strong enough and popular enough where they don't need it. They got the Euros in 2028. And you've already had the breadcrumbs from Ronaldo, from some of the Spanish players saying, Xavi said it. Yeah, the winning the Euros is harder than winning the World Cup. And so you already have that mindset from some of the European teams. The Champions League is untouched because that's brought to you by UEFA. That's not a FIFA thing. That's UEFA. And so all of a sudden you have this shift that's happening where UEFA is saying, we are doing this for the fan because football belongs to the fan. Football isn't about money. This is about people. And UEFA, part of their stuff was that the World Cup is a heritage and it should not become an investment product. And that they introduced the proposal. FIFA introduced the proposal without consulting them. They didn't tell them first. They didn't tell the governing bodies, the different federations about this. And the other thing is that they think that this prioritizes the commercial interest over the sport. And so this is a big deal because as we are closing up this World Cup and this past season of football, and we're starting a new one in August, and we're starting a new season, it's gonna get tense and it's gonna get ugly because the European leagues are gonna showcase themselves and are gonna put out a product that they know is superior to what the rest of the world is giving. And they are big enough, they are rich enough where they could probably have like an alternate World Cup. And they might have the pool to do it. And this might be the end of FIFA as we know it. If FIFA becomes this money-driven league where you get this foreign money that comes in and is just paying the top dollar for the teams and the national teams that are willing to take it. All of a sudden, this isn't the World Cup every 4 years. This isn't the tournament that everyone wants to see. This isn't the biggest tournament in the world. This becomes the biggest marketing spectacle in the world. And this also doesn't consider the players who don't get paid to participate in the World Cup, the players who sacrifice themselves to play in these tournaments, the players that most of them, at least the ones that play across Europe and the bigger countries that generate the most money, these guys end up donating their international checks. And so if you don't have the support of the top teams, the top federations, the biggest league and the biggest federation in the world and their countries, because it wasn't like half of them were like, no, we like it. It's all of them. All 55 said we are out. CONCACAF comes out and they said, we don't like it. They haven't gone as far as to say we are out. They haven't said we're boycotting. But they said, yeah, we don't agree with this. And maybe they boycott too. And maybe they get to that place. And this is where I think if they, meaning UEFA, can get CONCACAF to back out, all of a sudden, you can have a competition built by CONCACAF and UEFA where you can get all the European teams that can qualify for it and Mexico and the US. And that alone, the money that generates is bigger than almost anything that FIFA would have left. The other federations haven't said anything. They haven't come out and been as vocal. The Asia, they haven't said anything, but they've criticized. They kind of said, yeah, this doesn't seem right. And the African and the South American, they haven't said anything yet. And at least nothing major. And I think that they would come out and be more willing to work with Gianni Infantino. Especially those two, because the African Federation needs the funding. So if you can get more funding to them, they do it. And CONMEBOL has been treated great by Infantino. So that is no surprise at all. But imagine the next World Cup 2030, that it's scheduled to be hosted by Morocco and Spain and Portugal. Well, two of the three said we're out. You can't count on us. If this is what's going to happen, as of today, you can't have the World Cup. We're not hosting the World Cup. We're not being part of the World Cup. Can Morocco really host an entire World Cup? Uruguay and Paraguay and Argentina are all scheduled to host the game, but you can't have a World Cup part of it in Morocco and the rest of it in South America. That's not going to work. And so there is a big mess that FIFA has on their hands because their biggest and most profitable federation has finally stood up to them. And a few years ago, we had a few of the biggest leagues in the world, led by Florentino. They wanted to start the Super League. And they got up, and it was pretty much like an alternate Champions League. And part of the reasoning was that the biggest clubs in the world were saying, well, we're kind of costing ourselves money by playing the lower level teams. But if we were to create a Super League and the best teams would play the best teams all the time, we would be able to sell the product and make more money and go about it that way. UEFA came out against the European teams that wanted to do that and pretty much said, if you do this, if you start this, if you go through with this, you're out. We're kicking you out. We're kicking you out of UEFA, so no Champions League for you. We're kicking you out of your domestic leagues. We're kicking you out. You can do whatever you want, but you will not partake of us. And everybody, slowly but surely, said, no, we don't want it. No, we don't want it. No, we don't want it. And the fans won. The fans won there because the fans complained. The fans said, no, this isn't football. This isn't right. You already make a lot of money. You are making this strictly about money, and it should be about the sport as well. And the fan won. Now, in this scenario, I think Florentino had the wisdom, I think, to step back and say, okay, well, I think this can work, but if nobody wants it, then fine, we're out. I don't think Infantino has the same humility to do that. I don't think he has the ability to say I'm wrong. I'll back out. I'll do what's best, what everybody wants, what the majority wants. That's what I'll do. And this is why I think this is so important and so interesting, because we can possibly see a split in FIFA, and we can see a split in the World's game, where maybe for as long as Infantino's president, maybe we don't get the World Cup that we think we're gonna get. Maybe we don't get the World Cup as we know it. And maybe it's like a variation of like the World Cup minus Europe. Because maybe CONCACAF comes back if they offer them enough money and say, all right, we'll partake. And then what happens to the winners of those World Cups? Say we hit 2030 and 2034 are done without Europe. Forever, those would be known what the 2020 titles here in America are known as, the bubble titles. And so it's going to be very interesting how all this plays out, because the world champions of football will not be in the next World Cup, which is unheard of. It's never happened. And I just can't imagine a world where all of a sudden the World Cup starts and no European teams there. It's already weird enough that Italy hasn't been able to get back to the World Cup. Imagine if none of these guys are there. It just would be a different sport, a different tournament altogether. And I think UEFA has enough money, enough pool, and enough of the teams, enough of the leverage to pull this off. If this was CONMEBOL, yeah, they have some pool. Yeah, it would kind of suck to not see Argentina and Brazil and Uruguay and those teams in the World Cup. But it's not the same as to not have UEFA. It's different. It's a different feel. It's different altogether. And so as we all watch how all this will unfold, I hope that Infantino will have the humility I don't think he has to back out of this. I hope that UEFA is able to stand strong. And I hope that maybe this is the end of a lot of the corruption we see in FIFA. And maybe this is how we get Infantino out. Maybe this is how he gets taken out and we bring in someone who just cares about the sport, who just wants to see the best, wants to just do what's best for the sport. And if you're going to get bribed, just get bribed for money. Let's go back to Sepp Blatter. Let's go back to that corruption. But don't corrupt the sport. Don't corrupt what's on the field. And if it already felt, watching some of the Argentina games, that we were being cheated, that the fix was in, and if that feeling was already there, and if we already felt like, I don't know, man, it just seems like this is going to go one way because it has to go one way, I can't imagine how it would feel if we know that 20% is owned by random investors. So I stand with UEFA. I stand with CONCACAF, and hopefully CONCACAF has the guts to say we are going to boycott too. Because I think it brings a different pressure if all of a sudden you also don't have USA and Mexico participating, because now you have all of Europe and the two biggest names on the Western Hemisphere not in your tournaments. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, but you needed to know this because this is gigantic news that we haven't seen in FIFA since, at least not this type of news. We've seen like corruption and stuff like that, but we haven't seen something like this where a federation is saying we are out of all your competitions. So we'll see. We'll see how all this plays out. So without further ado, Psalm 6. Christian Worldview Friday. We're just moving it around, just keeping your toes. hopefully you at church, I guess every church is different, but if you had midweek service this week and you went, here's a little extra. And if you didn't, well, here's post midweek service for you. And go to church, man. So support your local church. Be part of it. Be part of your local church. Not even support your local church. Be part of your local church. And if you have Sunday, you're going to go to church on Sunday or Saturday, or tonight, sometime this weekend. Here's a little appetizer for that. What I have for you today, Psalm 6. And what we have in Psalm 6 is a very beautiful psalm with a very awesome theme. And the theme of Psalm 6 for our pod today, titled "When Grace Meets a Broken Soul," because we've talked about prayer. We've talked about those that can pray. Last week we looked at, whose prayer does God listen to? And today we look at the confidence that we have as Christians to approach God in our weakness, in our anguish, in our guilt, in our suffering, in our fear, in every single situation that we can possibly be in, and how we are able as God's people to bring all these things to God, because we trust that that in his love, he's going to hear us and he's going to answer our prayers, because we belong to him, because we are his. And that's the beauty of Psalm 6. And so, and it's what we see here. We see that our confidence is found in the mercy of God. In God's mercy is where our confidence is, not in us, not in our personal strength, not in our righteousness, not in any of that, because we are not righteous apart from Christ, because Romans tells us that we put on the righteousness of Jesus. And it's not in our strength. A lot of people will say, well, I kind of went through this because, and there's the thing that people say, God sends his toughest battles to his toughest soldiers. That's not biblical. I know that sounds super cool and super inspirational. That's not true. You don't go through bigger things because you're stronger than somebody. It's just God chose it that way. And so it has nothing to do with our strength. And I think that that idea that I'm going through stuff that somebody else isn't going through because I'm stronger is a lie. And it makes us prideful, and it drives us away from the Lord. So we should not think that. And it's also what we're going to see here. And as we think of how it is that we manage as Christians, how do we look at, and how do we deal with suffering, and how do we deal with guilt and fear and all these different things? It is important for us to remember that as Christians, the way we see it is that someone that has faith, someone that has a biblical faith, true faith, is not someone who doesn't suffer and doesn't experience grief. It's not the absence of grief, but it is the understanding that we are bringing our grief to the Lord, that we have someone to bring it to. And so many times, and you hear these charlatans, who will say well, you're not healed because you don't have enough faith. And we read throughout Scripture, no, the people of God suffered. The people of God weren't healed. The people of God were poor sometimes. The people of God were killed, and they went through hunger, and they were rejected, and they were subjected to horrible things. And so it wasn't because they didn't have faith. They had faith, but they were able to bring their faith to somebody that cared, somebody that can carry it. And that's what we see. It's what we see throughout Psalm 6. And And it's the view here that we have. And there's 10 verses. I'm not going to read all 10, and I'm not going to read I'm trying something new here. And so what we get first, because you can read it, you can read Psalm 6. And so the first thing we see, and I have it in these sections, in these 3 sections. And so the first one we see is it's a plea for mercy, where he's asking God to be merciful. He's asking the Lord to do these things. Oh Lord, rebuke me not in your anger. Don't rebuke me. Don't reject me. Don't push me away in your anger. Because this is obviously this is a plea for grace, for mercy. Where do you go after you've sinned? Where do you go? Who do you run to when you've messed up? And many times, if our view of God is a negative view or a low view of God, if you have a low view of God, you think, well, I can't go to him. I can't go to him after I sinned. I have to go somewhere else. He can't possibly accept me. He doesn't want me here. And we see over and over again how the psalmist will say, and the psalmist will tell us, like, no, like it is to the Lord whom I come to. Be gracious to me. And obviously it's written in such a way, O Lord, rebuke me not in your anger, nor discipline me in your wrath. And so don't rebuke me in your anger. Don't pull me away. And so we see here in the first 3 how David is recognizing, one, that God disciplines his children. And he's not asking that God wouldn't discipline him. Notice, he's not saying, God, don't discipline me. He's just saying, don't do it when you're upset. Don't discipline me in your wrath, is what he's asking for. Because that is very different than don't discipline me. And so many times we may have this idea that God doesn't discipline us, that God forgives us. And because he forgives us, honestly, same, Lord, don't discipline me in your wrath. And that's what he's getting at. And so the very first thing we see in the first 3 verses is how he's getting into that, how he's asking for God to discipline him, but not in his anger. He's reminding him, and he's telling him how he feels. Be gracious to me, verse 2, for I am languishing. That's what he's saying. And then he tells me, heal me, because for my bones are troubled. My soul is greatly troubled. And so he's coming to God, and he's just like, look, I'm going through it, man. I feel it. I just am a mess. I am just languishing. My bones are troubled. My soul is greatly troubled. I'm going through it. Help me. And that's the worldview of the Christian. It's not that you don't go through stuff. Is the Christian mentality when you go through stuff is, well, who do you run to? Who do you go? Where are you going to go? And the Christian's response is always, well, to God. The world's response, the non-Christian response is, well, to, and you pick whatever avenue. And there's avenues that sound healthy. There's people who say, well, whenever I'm feeling stressed, or I'm feeling this, or I'm feeling that, I go for a run and just kind of black out and feel good, or I work out, or I watch a movie, or whatever, I go for a walk, and, all these things sound healthy, I go to therapy and things like that. And I'm not speaking against those things. I'm not saying don't do those things. I'm not saying any of that. All I'm saying is, for the Christian, the very first thing that we are to do is come to God. Lord, help me with this. Lord, I'm going through this. Because the Christian knows, the Christian understands, I will be receiving from God grace, not an escape. And that is really the difference between the Christian worldview of what do you do with grief, and what do you do when you're hurting, what do you do when you're struggling. The Christian worldview there is, well, You take it to God because he gives you relief. Running or working out or, hanging out with friends or family or whatever other thing offers an escape, but they don't offer a relief. You're just escaping from it. And the Christian worldview for these things is not to escape these things, not to avoid these things, not to sweep them under the rug and pretend that they're not there, or just drown them out with like enough entertainment or drugs or alcohol or pleasure where you don't even feel it anymore. But the Christian worldview is that you're going to present them to God and allow and present them to God and let the Lord handle these things, and let the Lord kind of teach us and discipline us and help us in our weakness and give us the grace that we need, because we are dependent on him, because we are dependent on his grace, and we are praying during our suffering, praying during our anguish, praying during our grief, because he is who's going to hold us. And that is the difference. That is like a huge difference between how the world sees it and how the Christian should see it. And so it's what we are getting here. It's what he's doing here. It's how he's getting to these things. And so we see how there is like a difference here between discipline and condemnation. Discipline is a corrective thing that you're being built up. And to be built up, you got to be told what you're doing wrong. And so there's a building up that's happening with discipline. It doesn't always feel like you're getting built up, but the ultimate goal, the ultimate aim of discipline is to be built up, where condemnation is always being cast out. And we see the difference here, that David here is asking God to discipline him, but not in his anger. He's asking him, don't rebuke me in your anger. Don't discipline me in your wrath. He's asking, please discipline me, but don't condemn me. Don't push me away. Don't cast me out. Build me up. And so, and I think the question we all have to answer for ourselves is, well, why do we run from the Lord instead of running to him when we feel guilty, when we've sinned? Why do we run away from him as opposed to running to him, knowing that he hears us, knowing that he's going to build us up, knowing that he is faithful to forgive us if we repent of our sins? But yet, I think we know this, we know that verse, but why do we still run away instead of running to him in those moments? And I think that's a huge question. The second thing we see is how God's covenant love is the basis of our hope. Our hope is in God's covenant love. That's where our hope is in. Our hope is in that covenant that God has, that is love. God's love covenant is where our hope is. It's not in us. It's not in our good works. It's not, Lord, you're going to hear me because I went to church and I tithe and I do this and I do that and blah, blah, blah. And I've been a Christian for this long and my parents go to church and I take this and I'm this and I'm that. Lord, no. Our hope is in God's love and the covenant in God's covenant of love. And that's where it is. And so verse 4, he kind of lays this out in verse 4 and in verse 5. In verse 4 he says, save me for the sake of your steadfast love. For the sake of your steadfast love, for the sake of your your loving kindness, another version says. Save me for the sake of your steadfast love, your love that is constant, your love that is promised, your love that is given to me. For that, save me. Not because I'm good. Don't save me because I'm good, because remember me, like I'm David and I'm, remember I killed Goliath and I did this. Lord, save me because of that. No. Save me because of your loving kindness, because of the covenant of love that you have with me, that you will not destroy me, that I am your son, that I am yours, that you saved me, because that saved me. And so our basis of our hope when we come to God and we pray is not in, Lord, I know I messed up today. Lord, I know I've been sinning. Lord, I know I've been bad. But remember everything I've done at church. Remember all the offering I've given. Remember all the times I've gone to church. Remember I've preached. Remember, Lord, I lead the music at church. Remember I do these things at church. Remember, Lord, I'm taking my kid to church. Like, none of that. It's none of that. It's, Lord, save me because you love me. Because of your loving kindness. Because of your steadfast love. And so David's hope is rooted in God's covenant love. It's rooted in God. And that's part of like the difference between where does our hope and where does our hope come from? It doesn't come from God, what God has done, what God is doing, or is it me? Like, I have God's love because I repented, I believed, I gave my life to Jesus, I go to church, I preach, I evangelize, I sing, I fast, I, and whatever else you want to add. No, it's, Lord, because of your love, because you love me, Lord, save me, because I'm your kid, because I'm yours, save me. And so, we see this theme of, it is by the grace of God alone. It is God's the faithfulness to the covenant alone, or not alone, but it's the love of the covenant, God's covenant faithfulness. He's faithful to the promises he makes. And the salvation only comes from the Lord. Like David isn't crying, save me because I've been faithful. Save me because I have shown myself to be faithful. You say, no, save me because you are faithful. You're faithful. Not me. Don't save me because I'm faithful, because I'm not. If it was based on that, then yeah, we're all cooked. We're all cooked if it's because of our faithfulness. But he says, because you are faithful, save me. And that's how the gospel works. We see that in Ephesians 2. We see that, how that we are saved because of his mercy. And it's not by his grace. It's not because we deserve it. It's not because of any of that. And that's what we see in the scriptures. It's what we get. The third thing we see is the honesty. And I think this is, every time in Psalm we're going to look at prayer, this is always going to be a major point, just because this is, I think, the most important thing about prayer is just be honest. Just be honest before the Lord. I think if we could learn one thing about prayer, and it's not how long, it's not how, when, it's not any of that. It's not even posture. I think if we could all learn to just pray honest prayers, I think our understanding, our love, our devotion to the Lord, our faith would explode. Because I think a lot of our immaturity in God comes from the fact that we lie. Well, maybe lie is strong, but we're not honest with our prayers. We say things we don't mean. We ask for things we don't want. And we're not honest. We're not honest about the stuff that's inside. We'll ask about the stuff we think we want, or the stuff we need. And sometimes we want it. But we're not willing to attach to it how it's affecting us. We see, for example, and we see that this in the Old Testament a lot with like women and childbearing. And you see how like there's like a bitterness to them. And they'll say like, I'm bitter because I can't have children. And I think if we were to start attaching stuff like that, I think our prayers would grow immensely, because we would be truly honest before God. We would be just truly telling him, this is what's happening. This is what's in my heart. And he says that. He goes through that. Verse 6, I'll read these two. I am weary with my moaning. Every night I flood my bed with tears. I drench my couch with my weeping. He's crying. But he's not just saying like, yeah, I'm crying a lot, Lord. And I'm not saying like we need to become poets. I just think that there is an understanding what he's saying here. I am weary with my moaning. I'm tired of moaning. I'm tired. Every night I flood my bed with tears. And obviously this is, an exaggeration, obviously. He's not literally flooding his bed with tears. He's just saying, I'm crying so much. And in the imagery, I'm crying so much. I'm crying so much that my bed is drowning. It's flooded. And I think if we were to understand, if we were to walk before the Lord and understand that we need to be honest before Him, that our lament must be honest before the Lord. But God, I'm praying for X thing and not having it, seeing people have it, seeing people go through it. I'm going through this. And Lord, I am discouraged. Lord, I am depressed. I feel alone. Lord, I feel like nobody's there with me. Lord, I feel like if I disappeared, nobody would notice. And things like that, like you're just kind of going through these things. And many times we just say, Lord, I just pray for this, that your will be done, amen. And it's not it, because you're still carrying it. And David here, we don't even know what he's praying for specifically, but we know that he is so weary with my I'm weary with my moaning. Every night I flood my bed with tears. I drench my couch with my weeping. My eyes waste away because of grief. It grows weak because of all my foes. Like he's just like, I am done. I'm wasting away here. I am just completely wasting away in my sorrow. I am so sorrowful that I'm wasting away. That it sounds kind of dramatic. But I just think it gets us to understand what he's saying. And I think all of us have been there. We've all been there where, the Christian Standard Bible says, I am weary from my groaning. I'm tired. My groaning has made me tired. I am exhausted. And I think we've been there where we're so stressed out. We're so stressed out because of whatever situation. We're so sad because of something. We're devastated because of whatever news. Or we've sinned and we feel just so guilty. And we're so stressed. We're so guilty. We feel so awful that we're physically tired. We're exhausted. With my tears, I dampen my bed and drench my couch every night. My eyes are swollen from grief. And I think we've all cried where our eyes get all puffy. And that's what he's saying. They grow old because of all my enemies. Lord, I'm stressing out. I look older. I am aging, Lord, because of my enemies. And our prayers must be genuine, must express that sorrow that we carry. And if we were to do that, I think we would see an explosion in our faith, in our walks with the Lord. Because lament is biblical and expressing it is biblical. Emotional honesty is biblical and it should be done, it should be taught, and we should practice it. Depression it happens. People get depressed and people feel lonely and people get anxious and people go through that. And we need to learn to lead these people. And if you're one of those people, I'm one of those people that suffer depression. Actually, I've gone through like like the last 3 weeks, I've just been in the dumps, man. Just feeling super lonely. But yeah, it's just between you and I. But but yeah, and you go through it and you learn, like, I need to bring this to God. I need to tell the Lord these things. And I think that's a huge part of it. That's part of it. We need to learn to do that. And suffering. The children of God will suffer. Being Christian does not save us and keep us from suffering. And I think it's just important. It's important to understand that our Christianity, modern Christianity, American Christianity, tells us that if you have enough faith, you won't go through that. If you have enough faith, you're gonna get that prayer, that prayer answered. If you if you just believe, if you just give enough money, if you just do this, if you just do that. And American Christianity has tried to convince us that the issue that God is not, this isn't God, that this isn't normal. And the Bible tells us something very different, something totally different. And Psalm 6 here destroys the idea that the children of God will not suffer, that the children of God will not lament, because David here is lamenting. And so this is a man that is considered and is known of him and is said of him. He is a man after God's own heart, and he is crying his eyes out. So just let that sink in. Next time somebody tries to tell you, well, yeah, like, you just have to have enough faith, and none of that is going to happen. It's not God's will for you to suffer. Just remember Psalm 6, because that person is full of crap. And the last part, there is a confidence in every Christian, and we hit on this last time. And our faith allows us to believe this, that God hears us. We're confident of it. And that's what we see in verse 8 to 10, where David kind of like gets confidence back. There's a pep in his step. And he starts off, and I'll read the beginning of verse 8. Depart from me, all evildoers, for the Lord has heard the sound of my weeping. Get out of my way. God has heard me. He's heard the sound of my weeping. And nothing has changed. Like, his enemies are still there. The circumstance is still there. What changed? David's confidence. In what? In God. David's confidence that God heard me. I brought it to the Lord. I was going through an episode. I was feeling like this. I was in a dark moment. I was full of stress. I had sinned. I was feeling depressed because I haven't received this. I'm going through this. I'm in a dark moment in my life because of this. I prayed it. I told the Lord. I gave it to God again. I prayed and I cried and I told God how I felt and how it's making me feel and how it's dragging me down. And he heard me. Let's ride. The Lord has heard me. That's what he says. That's what he says. The Lord has heard me. And then verse 9, the Lord has heard my plea for help. The Lord accepts my prayer. Like 3 times he says and uses similar language. The Lord has heard my prayer. The Lord has heard my plea. The Lord has heard the sound of my weeping. The Lord has heard my plea for help. The Lord accepts my prayer. That's where his confidence came from. That's what restored him. His understanding, his faith, the work of the Spirit in him, giving him the hope that God has heard you. There's an assurance there. God is faithful and he's heard you. Prayer works, and that's why prayer works. And God is going to vindicate us in our hope, in our faith, because he won't let us fall into shame for him. Never. And I think that's just like a beautiful thing. Because sometimes the best prayer that God can answer is not changing the circumstance, changing the situation, or any of that. Sometimes the greatest answered prayer is God changing our confidence. And things are the same, and things haven't changed, and the situation is still the situation. But man, all of a sudden I feel so much hope. Man, all of a sudden I have so much joy. Man, all of a sudden I just know that it's going to be okay, because God has heard me. God has taken this. And that is the Christian worldview of the Christian. In times of trouble, in times of languish, in times of anguish, in times of circumstance and great need and all of that, sin and everything, bring it before the Lord honestly. He will hear you. He will give you the confidence. He will restore the joy of his salvation. So I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what your prayer is. But whatever it is, bring it to the Lord. Bring it to God. And as you bring it to God, and as you leave it with God, and as you bring it to God, and as you leave it with God, and it's just like, you got to keep doing it. You got to keep doing it. God will hear you. God will restore you. He will give you your confidence. And you too will rise like David and say, depart from me, all evildoers, for the Lord has heard the sound of my weeping. That's the Christian worldview. That's Psalm 6. I'll be back next week with Psalm 7. Till then, have a good weekend. Go to church. Serve at your church. Read your Bibles. Do all that good stuff. And watch some sports. Or watch a movie. Whatever. Love God. And love the people around you. And love your church. I'll talk to you next week. Go Sox.